They burst out laughing when I got just $10 from my grandfather's will. But then the lawyer slid me a sealed letter, and everything changed. Hi, my name is Eliza Moore, and I'm 27 years old. I wasn't born lucky. When I was 10, I lost both of my parents in a car accident. That day broke me. Everyone thought I'd end up in foster care. But my grandpa, Henry Moore, stepped in. He raised me like I was his own daughter. He made me hot cocoa every night. He sang old country songs while fixing things in the garage. He cheered for me when I got a B+ in math, even though I was crying because I wanted an A. He was my whole world. He owned a lot of land, businesses, and even a cottage in the countryside. People said he was rich, but to me, he was just Grandpa. Kind, funny, wise. But then he got sick. Cancer. And just like that, he was gone. The day of the will reading, I felt numb. I wore a plain black dress. I sat quietly at the back of the lawyer's office. The room was filled with my aunts, uncles, and cousins, people who never visited Grandpa. They never called, never helped. But now that he was gone, they showed up wearing fake tears and designer clothes. They laughed too loud, smiled too big. They were ready to grab their share of his money. I didn't speak to anyone. No one sat beside me. The lawyer, Mr. Kincaid, walked in and started reading the will. To my daughter, Helen, I leave the beach house and the BMW. Helen clapped her hands and wiped a fake tear. To my son, Robert, I leave the downtown property and all stock in Moretech Ltd. Robert smiled like a kid with candy. My cousins got expensive jewelry, land, and trust funds. Everyone was smiling. Everyone. Except me. I sat there gripping my purse, just waiting to hear Grandpa's words. He wouldn't forget me. He couldn't. He raised me. He loved me. Right? Then Mr. Kincaid cleared his throat. To Eliza Moore, he leaves the sum of $10. The room went silent for a second. Then, laughter. Loud, ugly laughter. My Aunt Helen covered her mouth and giggled. My cousin Travis leaned toward me and whispered, "Guess you really were just a charity case, huh?" I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Because Grandpa taught me something. Don't cry when people laugh at you. Smile. It makes them nervous. So I smiled, even though my heart felt like it had cracked in half. The laughter died down. Mr. Kincaid closed the will. People stood up, hugging each other and talking about money. I stood too, ready to leave, when suddenly he said, "Wait, there's one more item." Everyone turned back around. He looked right at me. "This is addressed only to Miss Moore." He reached under the table and pulled out a sealed white envelope. He handed it to me gently. On the front, written in blue ink, were 4 words. For Eliza, private only. My hand started shaking. My cousin rolled his eyes and muttered, "What now, a goodbye poem?" But I didn't answer. I didn't care what any of them said anymore, because in that moment, I felt Grandpa again, right there with me. I walked out of the room holding the envelope tight. I didn't look back. Outside, I sat in my old car and locked the doors. The envelope felt heavy, like it held more than paper, like it held answers. I opened it. Inside was a letter, written in blue ink, full of Grandpa's messy handwriting. It said, "Eliza, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. But don't cry, sweet girl. I didn't forget you.
I left the fools what they wanted, money. But I left you something better, something real, something meant only for you. Go to the old red barn behind the cottage. Use the key taped to the back of this letter. Trust me. Love always. Grandpa. I turned the letter over, and there it was, a tiny silver key taped neatly to the back. My heart started racing. That barn? I hadn't been there since I was 16. Grandpa used to say, "That old barn's got more secrets than people do." I always thought he was joking, but now I wasn't so sure. I started the car. My fingers trembled on the steering wheel. I was going back to the cottage, back where the real story would begin.
The old road to the countryside was quiet, too quiet. I hadn't been here in over 10 years, not since I left for college. Back then, I used to ride with Grandpa in his blue truck. We'd buy warm bread from the bakery and feed ducks by the lake. Now, I was all alone, driving down the same road, with a letter in my hand and a key taped to the back. The sky was getting dark. The clouds looked heavy, like rain was waiting to fall. I didn't stop. I didn't call anyone. I just drove, because something deep inside me told me this wasn't over. 3 hours later, I arrived at the cottage. It was small, made of stone, with a white fence and a red door. It still looked the same, but it felt different, like it had been waiting for me. I parked the car, stepped out, and the wind hit me. It was cold, sharp. The trees were swaying. The air smelled like rain and old wood. I walked past the house and followed the narrow path through the trees. That path led to the barn, the one Grandpa always told me to stay away from. Old things like to be left alone, he once said. But now, he wanted me to go in. I reached the clearing, and there it was, the old red barn. It looked like something from a ghost story. The paint was peeling, one side was sinking a little, the roof had holes. But it was still standing, strong, like Grandpa. I walked up to the big wooden doors. There was a small metal lock on the side. I pulled the key from the letter and slipped it in. Click! It opened. Inside, it was dark, dusty, quiet. The air smelled like hay and old metal. Sunlight slipped through the cracks in the roof. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Everything was still. There were broken tools, an old rocking chair, and a pile of hay in the corner. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then I remembered something. "Under the hay," Grandpa used to say when I was little. "Always keep the good stuff under the hay." I ran to the corner and started pulling it apart with my bare hands. Hay flew everywhere. Dust got in my eyes. I didn't stop. Then my fingers hit something hard. Wood. It was a floorboard. Loose. I tugged at it. It creaked, then popped open. Beneath it was a wooden box. Old, but locked. There was another small key in the envelope Grandpa gave me. I tried it. Click. It opened. And what I saw inside made my knees go weak. The first thing I saw was a thick legal folder. Inside it were papers, dozens of them. Each one had my name, Eliza Moore. Land ownership, stock certificates, property deeds. I saw a document with words I didn't understand at first, but then I read it again. Full ownership transfer, Blue Coral Island, Belize. A private island? What? I flipped through more papers. There were bank statements, all offshore, all in my name. Millions.
I started breathing fast. My hands were shaking. But then I saw a small black USB drive. Taped to it was a note. Play me. I rushed back to the cottage and found Grandpa's old laptop on the shelf. It still worked. I plugged in the USB. There was only one file. I clicked it, and then his face filled the screen. Grandpa, wearing his old plaid shirt and cap, sitting in his favorite chair. He smiled. Hi, sweetheart. If you're watching this, it means I'm not there to hug you, but I'm still with you. Always. I know what they did at the will reading. I know they laughed. That's why I gave them what they expected. A few houses, some stocks. Let them fight over it. Let them think they won. But you, Eliza, you never asked for anything. You gave love, you gave kindness, you gave me a reason to smile when I was dying. So I left you the real gift. The island was something I bought long ago, a place I always wanted you to see. It's all yours now. Everything is. Don't tell them. Not yet. Let them laugh. Let them mock you. He leaned forward and whispered, because soon you'll walk past them like a queen, and they'll remember the girl they once laughed at now owns everything. I couldn't stop crying, but I wasn't sad. I was proud. Seen. Loved. This wasn't just about money. It was about the truth. He believed in me. And now, I believed in me too. I closed the laptop, held the letter to my heart, and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa. I won't waste this." I looked out the window at the dark trees and the swaying barn, and I knew this story wasn't over. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I just sat on the couch in Grandpa's old cottage, holding the letter, staring at the screen where his face had just been. Replay, pause, replay again. Every time I watched it, I cried. Not because he left me money, not because I owned an island, but because he saw me. He always saw me, even when no one else did. The next morning, the sunlight came in through the windows, and for the first time since he died, I felt warm again. I made some tea using the kettle Grandpa always used. It still whistled the same way. I smiled, but inside my thoughts were spinning. The papers, the deed, the USB. Was it all real? Was the island actually mine? Were the bank documents legit? I needed to be sure. I took the legal folder and drove into the town nearby. There was a lawyer's office on the corner of Maple and Pine, the same place Grandpa used to take me for ice cream after checkups. I walked in and showed the receptionist my papers. "Is Mr. Donovan in?" I asked. "I think he used to work with my grandfather." 15 minutes later, I sat across from Mr. Donovan, an older man with a gray beard and gentle eyes. He looked at the documents, every single one, and then he leaned back and said something I'll never forget. "Miss Moore, do you know what you have here?" I shook my head slowly. He smiled. "You don't just have property, you have an empire." He explained everything. The island in Belize, it was worth millions on its own. It had a private dock, 5 villas, and a luxury resort in progress. The offshore accounts, completely legal. Grandpa had been building them for over 20 years. They were all in my name, transferred quietly, protected. And the best part, no one else knew. Not my aunts, not my uncles, not even the cousins who laughed. It was like Grandpa planned the whole thing perfectly. Mr. Donovan handed me a leather binder. He'll help me arrange everything. But Miss Moore, he looked me in the eyes, Your family won't be happy when they find out you got the real inheritance." I nodded. "That's okay," I said softly. "I'm not doing this for them." That night, I drove back to the cottage, but this time, I felt different, stronger. I had something they didn't: peace.
A week later, I booked a trip to Belize, first class, the first time I'd ever flown that way. When I stepped off the plane, warm air rushed to my face. The sky was blue, the ocean sparkled. A driver with a sign that said Miss Moore was waiting for me. He took me to a boat, the boat took me to the island, and when I saw it, I gasped. It was beautiful, like something from a dream. Tall palm trees, white sand, clear water that looked like glass, and at the center of it all, a small hill with a wooden sign that said Eliza's Place. I covered my mouth. Tears filled my eyes again. He named it after me. I walked around the whole island. There were construction teams building the resort. They all greeted me kindly. "We've been expecting you, ma'am," the manager said. "Mr. Moore told us everything would belong to you someday." I laughed and cried at the same time. "He always did love surprises," I whispered. Over the next few days, I signed documents, made decisions, and learned more about Grandpa's secret world. He had built businesses in silence. He'd invested smartly. He had protected everything in my name. He knew my aunts and uncles would fight, so he gave them scraps and left me the gold. On my last day on the island, I stood on the beach and looked out at the sea. "I wish you were here," I said out loud. Then I remembered something he once told me. "Even when I'm gone, sweet girl, I'll be watching, proud of you, always." And I smiled because I knew he was. I flew back home a week later, not to hide, not to cry, but to finish what he started. To walk into the lion's den with my head held high. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I worked with Mr. Donovan to get everything in order. Bank transfers, legal documents, business titles. I even ordered something special, a custom black designer gown, sharp heels, a car. Not just any car, a Rolls-Royce Phantom. I was ready now. Not to show off, but to show them. They didn't break me. And when I walked up to that mansion house, I didn't knock. I arrived. The mansion looked just like I remembered. Big white pillars, polished driveway, a fountain that never worked. The house where my grandfather once lived. The house I wasn't allowed to visit after he passed. The house full of people who laughed when I was left $10. But today, I wasn't the girl in the back of the room anymore. I was the owner of it all, and I had the papers to prove it. I stepped out of the black Rolls-Royce, wearing my custom black gown with heels that clicked on the pavement like thunder. My hair was pinned up, my makeup flawless. The front door opened before I even knocked. My cousin Travis stood there, holding a glass of wine. He blinked twice. Eliza, you look different." I tilted my head and smiled. "Do I?" He laughed nervously. Behind him, I saw Aunt Helen and Uncle Robert. Their smiles dropped when they saw me. "What's going on?" Aunt Helen asked. "Did you win the lottery or something?" I stepped inside without answering. I pulled out a thick brown envelope and laid it gently on the living room table. "This," I said,
is Grandpa's real gift. They looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Uncle Robert asked. I opened the envelope and spread out the documents. Deeds, bank transfers, ownership of Mortec, and most of all, a new version of Grandpa's will, signed and dated 1 week before he died. It had Mr. Donovan's seal on it. It was real. Grandpa left you the public will, but this was private, meant only for me. Travis picked up the top page and read it aloud. "I, Henry Moore, leave the total sum of all remaining personal assets, properties, companies, and financial holdings to Eliza Moore." The room went dead silent. Aunt Helen's mouth fell open. "No, that can't be true. You only got $10. I looked her dead in the eyes. That's what he wanted you to think. I could see the shock spreading across their faces. Travis backed up, shaking his head. Wait, are you saying you own Mortec now?" I nodded. "The company, the buildings, the stocks, the island in Belize, everything." They were frozen, unblinking, pale. And then I said something I had waited so long to say. "Grandpa gave you scraps because you treated him like a bank. He gave me the empire because I treated him like a father."
Uncle Robert stood up, his voice shaking. "This can't be legal. This must be fake. Where did you get this?" "From the man who worked beside Grandpa for 20 years, I said. "And it's already been filed in court." They were trapped. Everything they thought they had, gone. I turned to Travis, who once whispered that I was a charity case. He opened his mouth to say something fake, something smooth, maybe even try to act friendly. "Hey, cuz," he started. But I walked past him, didn't stop, didn't smile, just said, "Don't cuz me now." I walked to Grandpa's study, the room they had locked up after he died. I opened the door. Dust filled the air. His chair was still there, his books, his framed photo of me at my high school graduation. I sat down in his chair, and for a moment, I could almost hear his voice again. "Smile, sweet girl. You're the one who made me proud." The family didn't follow me. They just stood in the living room, still confused, still stunned, still choking on their own laughter. And me? I had never felt more peaceful. Later that night, I stood outside the mansion. I looked up at the stars, and I whispered, "They thought $10 was an insult, but you knew. You always knew." I smiled, not because I was rich, not because I won, but because I was loved, and because I waited. I didn't fight or beg or scream. I let them laugh, and now I was the last one smiling. As I got into my Rolls Royce, the wind picked up, the trees swayed, and just for a second, I imagined I heard Grandpa's voice again. "Let them laugh, Eliza. You'll smile last." Guys, let me know where you are watching from. Do not forget to subscribe.